We have millions of yards of dirt that needs to get moved every year, or else it's going to just load up the last few years. And that makes me really nervous if something goes wrong, right?
17 minutes. That is the tiny sliver of time that separated Parker Schnabel from total disaster and handed him a $50 million jackpot.
Parker, you want to look at this one? This is your baby. It's your new ground. And that ground over there is really, really chunky. We're going to throw this on top of it. Wow, sweet.
Most people think gold mining is about luck or heavy machinery. It's not. In this case, it was about a secret war fought with leaked documents, hidden journals from the 80s, and a high-speed truck race that felt like an action movie. Rick Ness was banned, his operation frozen, but he wasn't out of the fight. What nobody realized was that the ground itself was moving and only one of them would survive the shift. Dark cameras and deep tremors. Rick Ness did not just lose a permit, he got hit with a ban no miner in the Yukon has ever seen. One moment he is gearing up for the biggest push of his season. The next, chaos began with a document that was never meant to see daylight.
I know that there's good gold down there, but until you see it in the box, you're always tentative, you're always nervous. I'm expecting to see good things, but really right now I just want to get my eyes on it. It's going to take a lot of pressure off.
A confidential mining compliance memo. No signature, no routing code, no official stamp. It leaked into a tiny corner of an obscure industry form late at night. Its timestamp showed it was created months before seasonal permits were even opened. And right there, sitting in the middle of the page in bold letters, was a phrase nobody in the Yukon mining world had ever seen applied to a working miner. Pre-disqualified Ness Rick. Whoever wrote it expected it to stay buried. The problem was, someone out there decided tonight was the night to blow the whole thing open. What made the memo even stranger was the violation code it referenced. A string of numbers that did not match any known section of the Mining Conduct and Compliance Act. Regulators, historians, even retired inspectors started digging, trying to match it to anything in the last 4 decades of Yukon mining law. Nothing matched. It was as if the code had been invented on the spot and quietly slipped into an internal system no outsider was ever supposed to see. Analysts started whispering. Was this a genuine document? Or was someone crafting a legal trap long before Rick even stepped onto his claim this season? The leak did not explode immediately. It spread like smoke instead. Thin, quiet, drifting through inboxes and late-night group chats across the territory.
We've got a lot planned for this season, but my number one priority above all else was getting to the bottom of Rally Out. We're just about there. We're finally finding the rim.
But here is the catch. Everything changed the moment a copy landed on Parker Schnabel's geological strategist's desk. Within minutes, a private call went out. Not to Parker directly, but to a senior operator on his crew. The message was short. Monitor the eastern perimeter at sunrise. No explanation, no reasoning, just a command. By dawn, the Yukon rumor mill was fully awake, buzzing with one dangerous consensus. Something huge had been set in motion and nobody knew yet whether it was a mistake, sabotage, or the opening move in a coordinated takeover. Across the valley, Parker's drone operators were doing their routine sweeps when they noticed something off. Rick Ness's wash plant cameras, normally live 24/7, were dark. Not offline, not disconnected, just frozen. The last frame was locked in place exactly 16 hours earlier. That was not a glitch. That was someone shutting things down from the inside. The drones widened their sweep and picked up abandoned fuel drums sitting in a crooked row. Conveyors dusted with untouched pay dirt. Hoses coiled like someone walked away mid-shift. It looked less like a scheduled stop and more like the entire operation hit a wall instantly. Parker's foreman stared at the data, trying to make sense of it. Is he hiding a discovery or did someone shut him down? But Parker did not answer. He did not even look at the footage. Instead, he walked over to the seismic monitor, a tool most crews never bother with because it takes expertise to read properly. He tapped the screen twice. He zoomed in on the boundary line between his land and Rick's. He stared at the deep field vibrations coming through. It wasn't surface noise. It wasn't machinery. Something heavy was shifting underground. The kind of pattern that only appears when the Earth is settling over a geological structure that has just been disturbed. Get a monitoring team out there, Parker said calmly. but everyone around him felt the tension under his voice. Parker did not act like a man seeing an opportunity. He acted like someone who had been expecting something like this for a long time. The graphs kept pulsing, faint but regular, like a heartbeat from deep inside the earth. Whatever it was not small. Parker knew the ground was moving, but he didn't know Rick was already fighting back. Operation Aftershock begins. Basically, Rick Ness's world had already flipped upside down. His inner crew packed into an old equipment shed around midnight. The only light was coming from headlamps reflecting off the rusted walls. The rest of the claim was dark. The generators were shut off. Rick stood at the center holding the band notice on a cracked tablet screen, rotating it slowly so the others could see the blurred digital signature at the bottom. It was not blurred by accident. It looked auto-generated, the kind of template signature used for internal drafts, not legally binding documents.
Thanks for coming. I wanted to show you this property. This is the claim block in white. And call it the Goldfinger property.
They did not sign it, Rick said quietly. Someone did not want to. A mechanic at the back stepped forward, visibly nervous. Earlier that day, he had overheard a mining board agent talking on the phone in rushed whispers. The name he caught, only one name, did not match anyone on the official public roster. They said the shutdown had to go through before the window closed, the mechanic explained. I thought they meant weather. Now I am not so sure. The shed went silent. Rick knew there were only two reasons someone would rush a ban. Either he had hit something valuable or someone wanted him out of the way before he found it. The crew decided to move fast. If the ban was real, even temporarily, the board could legally seize any active geological data from his operation. That meant core samples, drill logs, seismic readings, everything. So they split into pairs, slipping through the darkness and collecting every core tube, vial, and binder with mineral traces inside. The samples were loaded into an old utility truck with its headlights covered. Rick ordered all radio communication stopped immediately. Any frequency they used could be triangulated. GPS beacons were switched to encrypted mode, a protocol Rick had only used once before. As the truck rumbled away with the evidence, Rick stood alone for a moment, staring across the valley toward Parker's lights in the distance. He did not know yet about the leaked memo, the violation code that did not exist, or the seismic anomalies Parker had already detected. He only knew one thing with absolute certainty. Someone wanted him off the map. Not downscaled, not delayed, gone. And while the Yukon slept under the thin glow of the northern lights, two operations were moving toward a collision. Rick guarded his core samples like evidence in a criminal case, unaware that Parker had already identified the first hint of a geological pattern that only surfaces once every few decades. The truth arrived in the form of a forgotten journal. Worn leather, yellowed pages, coordinates scrawled in the margins, pulled from a box of estate paperwork purchased at auction by a retired prospector. Inside was the kind of description Yukon geologists insist is impossible. A twisted subchannel that bent, looped, and shifted every few hundred feet, creating natural gold traps big enough to hoard wealth for millennia. The sketch inside, frantic but deliberate, mapped a structure identical to the one Rick's final drill hole had pierced before everything went dark. It was the missing link neither man knew existed. Rick studied the journal in the dim light of his truck cab, turning the pages slowly. Whoever filed the ban knew something. The ban wasn't about compliance. It was a maneuver meant to freeze him in place before he could hit the exact spot the journal predicted. The handwriting mentioned a single phrase 3 times. Once it bends, it empties.
I'm very excited what I see right there. I've been waiting to see bedrock in this hole. We've got it right here. This is where the good stuff is. We're either on the best gold in this hole or we're very close to it.
Rick didn't know exactly what that meant, but his gut knew enough. Across the valley, the atmosphere inside Parker's mobile command trailer had sharpened into something close to controlled chaos. Parker had just received a text from an anonymous number. His claim is not protected. Clock is running. No explanation, no follow-up, but Parker didn't need any. His eyes flicked sideways to the seismic map again. He triggered a protocol he hadn't touched in years, Operation Aftershock, a land positioning plan designed to sweep into vulnerable zones before rivals even realized the borders had shifted. And that is putting it lightly. His crews moved like a coordinated strike team. 2 full crews pulled from the Big Red Cut, 3 dozers rerouted, A wash plant hitched a transport with instructions to move before sunrise. His foreman stared, stunned. Mid-season shifts on this scale didn't happen, but Parker felt something he rarely admitted out loud. Instinct. The anonymous message. The shutdown. The seismic pulse. The map anomalies. They were pieces of a single invisible chain reaction. Rick was reading the map, but Parker was already rewriting the borders with his dozers. 2 miners, 1 truth. Rick walked into the mining board building for what was labeled a temporary status justification hearing. It was a procedural tool used only in catastrophic situations like mine collapses or toxic spills, never for a routine seasonal miner. The room was overly formal, too quiet. The board members sat unusually stiff, eyes down, papers perfectly squared on the table. Rick took his seat without speaking, letting the silence settle. When he finally asked for evidence behind the ban, their hesitation was immediate. One official shuffled papers without looking up. Another cleared her throat. Rick leaned forward, his voice calm but edged. You banned a working operation without evidence. So who gave the order? That was when one of them slipped. A middle-aged board member let frustration crack through his professional mask. Certain interests felt your claim's location presented complications, he said before biting the words off. He realized too late that he had said the quiet part out loud. A location, not an action. A location. In that moment, the truth clicked perfectly into place. The ban wasn't about risk. It was about territory. Timing the freeze so someone else could move in before Rick realized what he drilled into. But the instant he stepped out of that hearing room, they understood they no longer controlled the chain reaction they had set off.
I staked the 2 2-mile leases here initially. It's got a lot of attributes that make it, I think, very prospective. I think what's most unique about this deposit is obviously the fact there's no overburden.
Because across town, Rick's phone lit up with a number he didn't recognize. It was a former territorial mining inspector who retired after calling out the wrong political donor. The man used coded phrasing. Protocol 7B. Nobody files 7B unless they are hiding a land shift. Rick's blood ran cold. Weeks earlier, he had noticed subtle discrepancies in boundary data. Tiny, almost imperceptible differences. The inspector continued. A tectonic microslip so small it barely registered on sensors nudged several boundary markers just enough to reroute projected mineral channels on paper. The shift placed the richest predicted zone exactly along Parker's claim line, but not entirely within Parker's ground. Rick stormed into his workspace, tearing through stacks of reports and pulling every core sample recorded from the past 2 seasons. He gathered seismic charts, hand-drawn sketches, micro-density scans, and modern geological overlays, building a case so detailed it looked like a criminal investigation. Meanwhile, Parker's camp prepared its own scientific arsenal. His drone pilots flew continuous LiDAR sweeps over the buffer zone, stitching the data into a multi-layered terrain map with sub-centimeter accuracy. The scans contradicted Rick's data completely. The corridor appeared to dip sharply under Parker's side only, bypassing Rick's drill sites entirely. Someone's data was wrong, or someone's data had been fed information not available to the public. When Parker arrived at the board with his polished digital presentation, he walked in with the calm of a man who believes the ground itself has chosen his side. Rick entered moments later carrying weathered binders and the journal. The atmosphere turned electric. Digital terrain models collided with paper sketches. Geological truth fractured into dueling interpretations. Rick slammed his palm on the table and accused Parker of using classified geological maps. Parker fired back instantly, calling Rick's data outdated and based on legend chasing. The board attempted to reassert control, but they were outmatched. 2 miners, 2 data sets, 2 clashing realities.
It's a bit of a surprise to see Rick. We have a lot of history. The one thing that really bugs me, though, is for him to say, I gave you my best years. Basically, that his best years are behind him. That, to me, is crazy.
And buried between them sat a gold corridor that defied every geological rule ever written. The room didn't end in a ruling, it ended in paralysis. With no legal pathway left, the board authorized the last mechanism Yukon law allows when facts break down. A provisional extraction test. Ownership will go to the miner who physically exposes the corridor first. No appeals, no reinterpretations. The lawyers were done talking. Now the excavators had to do the screaming. The instant the ruling dropped, the valley detonated into action. Parker launched his crew with frightening precision, his operators shaving the ground layer by layer, cutting trenches with machine-perfect angles. Every 20 minutes, Parker recalibrated, reading the earth like a topographical code. The legal war had now ripped into the soil itself. Rick countered with a vertical strategy. He ordered a single deep test hole punched straight into the corridor's heart. At 30 feet, the drill ground into dense black sand, the signature of ancient high-pressure gold channels. Rick signaled to go deeper, and the rig vibrated violently, chewing through compressed history. Both crews pushed their machinery to the breaking point. Then chaos struck simultaneously. Parker's grizzly bars screamed as boulders slammed down, coated in thick sheets of visible gold, the richest he had ever seen. Across the valley, Rick's drill erupted. A geyser of black sand and coarse nuggets shot skyward, some chunks the size of marbles, hitting the catch pan like hail. It was a dead heat. Two crews, two massive discoveries, simultaneous and undeniable. But the Yukon board didn't care about ties, they cared about who filed the evidence first. A frantic race to Dawson ensued, two trucks tearing down the access road with the season's fate rattling in the passenger seats. In the end, it all came down to 17 minutes. Parker's sample hit the board's desk exactly 17 minutes before Rick's. That tiny sliver of time, less than a lunch break, handed Parker full extraction rights to the entire corridor. Rick's ban was overturned and his geology was proven right, but the gold was legally Parker's. Rick Ness had won the moral victory, but Parker Schnabel walked away with the $50 million jackpot. So, was this simply a case of better logistics winning the day? Or did the board manipulate the timing to favor the bigger operation from the start? Hit that like button, subscribe, and tell us in the comments. Does Rick Ness deserve a rematch, or is possession 9/10 of the law?